"You'll birth me 3 sons by Christmas," a virgin billionaire declared to the shy Maid. A scandal explodes on camera. A powerful man used to control offers a secret contract. Live in his penthouse, protect his image, and the world watches. She's a shy maid with a past and everything to lose. He's a cold billionaire with a family trust that will destroy him if he has no heir. But someone is lying. Forged papers, a boardroom plot, and a brother who will do anything to take power. Can she clear her name before he chooses his empire over the woman he loves? Mara Hayes smoothed down her black uniform dress, checking her reflection in the polished marble of the penthouse foyer. Everything had to be perfect for the Victoria Voss Foundation Holiday Gala. She'd spent weeks coordinating with staff, reviewing checklists, and ensuring every detail matched the exacting Voss family standards. The afternoon sun slanted through floor-to-ceiling windows, catching dust motes as staff hurried past with garment bags and equipment. Mara checked her watch. 3 hours until the first guests would arrive at the venue. Her clipboard held the day's schedule, each item methodically crossed off. "Maria, the flowers for the main hall need to be moved to the loading dock," she called out to one of the housekeepers. "And please remind Jacques that Mr. Voss's tuxedo needs pressing." Years in the foster system had taught Mara to be invisible when needed, to observe and adapt. Those same skills had helped her rise to head maid in the Voss household. The position paid enough to cover her modest studio apartment and help with her foster sister Amy's medical bills. It wasn't glamorous, but Mara took pride in her work. She paused by a wall of family photos, generations of Voss wealth captured in silver frames. The latest showed Alexander Voss at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, his tall frame commanding in a tailored suit. The camera caught his usual mask of control, but Mara had worked here long enough to notice the tension around his eyes. The elevator chimed, and Alexander himself strode into the foyer. He'd left the office early to prepare for the gala, his shoes clicking against marble as he loosened his tie. Mara stepped back, blending into the background as she'd learned to do. "The board meeting files are on your desk, Mr. Voss," his assistant called after him, nearly jogging to keep up with his long strides. "Hold all calls unless it's Gardner about the merger." Alexander replied, his voice clipped. He stopped in the hallway, pressing his fingers to his temples. For a moment, his shoulders sagged, the weight of empire visible in the gesture. Mara watched from her position by the flowers, noting how his jaw clenched, the way his fingers trembled slightly before he forced them still. She'd seen the business news. Voss Global was facing pressure from activist investors, and the foundation gala needed to project strength. The moment passed quickly. Alexander straightened, his mask of control sliding back into place as he headed toward his private wing. Mara released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The next few hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Mara supervised the staff departure to the venue, checking every room before leaving herself. Her small apartment offered just enough time to change into the simple black dress she'd bought on sale last month. The venue gleamed with holiday splendor when she arrived. Crystal chandeliers, garlands of white roses, ice sculptures catching the light. Mara slipped through the service entrance, nodding to security. Staff buzzed around the massive ballroom, making final adjustments before the city's elite arrived. "Audio check for Mr. Voss's speech," a technician called out. Mara glanced at the stage where Alexander would soon address hundreds of donors. The podium stood ready, spotlights perfectly positioned. She thought of his moment of weakness in the hallway, wondered if anyone else had noticed. The man who commanded boardrooms and built empires was human after all. The thought shouldn't have affected her, but something about that glimpse of vulnerability stuck with her. The first guests began arriving, women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos that cost more than Mara's yearly salary. She watched from the wings as they air-kissed and networked, their laughter echoing off marble floors. Alexander appeared backstage, now perfectly composed in his tuxedo. His presence seemed to charge the air, making staff stand straighter. Mara busied herself adjusting a flower arrangement, but she felt his energy like a physical thing. 2 minutes, Mr. Voss, the event coordinator whispered. Mara risked a final glance as Alexander approached the stage steps. His shoulders were set, his expression determined. Whatever vulnerability she'd witnessed earlier was locked away, replaced by the titan who'd built an empire. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd. Alexander stepped into the spotlight, owning the stage with that effortless grace of the truly powerful. Mara held her breath, along with everyone else, as he prepared to speak. Standing in the shadows of the wings, clipboard clutched to her chest, Mara realized she was about to witness more than just another society speech. The man on stage carried the weight of legacy, and for the first time, she wondered about the cost of bearing it. Around her, staff and technicians focused on their tasks, but Mara couldn't look away from Alexander's commanding presence, remembering that single unguarded moment in the hallway. The contrast fascinated her. Power and vulnerability, public persona and private truth. The spotlight caught the sharp angles of his face as he gripped the podium. In the wings, Mara watched silently, knowing she was witnessing both the myth and the man, the untouchable CEO and the human being who rubbed his temples when no one was supposed to be looking. Music swelled through hidden speakers, and the event coordinator gave the final cue. Alexander squared his shoulders, and Mara knew the moment of truth had arrived. The gala that would define this holiday season was about to begin. Alexander's voice filled the ballroom, each word precise and measured. The Victoria Voss Foundation represents more than charity. It represents legacy, the responsibility we bear to those who will inherit our world. His hands rested on the podium, shoulders squared beneath his perfectly tailored tuxedo. From her position near the kitchen entrance, Mara supervised staff carrying champagne trays while tracking small details others missed. A crooked centerpiece here, a dropped napkin there. The weight of diamonds and expectations filled the room as Manhattan's elite listened to Alexander's speech. Our commitment to excellence demands more than mere donations, he continued, his tone as crisp as his white shirt. It demands vision. A server stumbled slightly near one of the massive ice sculptures, a towering angel carved from crystal-clear ice. Mara noticed the base shifting before anyone else did. Without drawing attention, she moved smoothly across the floor, reaching the sculpture just as it began to tilt. Her hands caught the base, steadying it silently. The cold bit into her palms, but she held firm, adjusting its position with subtle movements until it was stable again. Looking up, she found Alexander's eyes locked on her from the stage. For a heartbeat, their gazes held. His intense, almost surprised, hers steady and calm. The moment passed. He continued his speech without missing a word, but something had shifted in that brief connection. As the formal portion of the evening concluded, the after-party began. The atmosphere loosened slightly, though the undercurrent of power and wealth remained. Mara moved through the crowd like a shadow, directing staff and maintaining order. "Come on, Alexander, one drink won't kill you," she overheard a board member say. "We closed the Gardner merger. Celebrate for once." Alexander stood near a pillar, his usual fortress of solitude cracking under the night's pressure. "Fine. 1. The bourbon appeared in his hand, amber liquid in crystal. Mara noticed his slight hesitation before drinking. She'd heard the rumors, the CEO who never drank, never dated, never showed weakness. "Speaking of celebrations," a woman in diamonds drawled, "when are you giving the Voss name and air? The board's not getting any younger." Color rose in Alexander's neck. The bourbon was hitting him harder than anyone expected. My personal life isn't board business. Is there a personal life to discuss? Another executive laughed. Some say you're emotionally sterile. All business, no pleasure. The Ice King of Manhattan. Someone added. Married to the company. Mara saw Alexander's fingers tighten around his glass. She moved closer, noticing a broken champagne flute near his feet. As she knelt to clean it, the voices continued. No woman's managed to crack that facade. Maybe he needs an arrangement. Traditional marriage is overrated anyway. Alexander's voice cut through the chatter, slurred but commanding. His eyes landed on Mara, still crouched near his feet. You. The room quieted. Mara froze, dustpan in hand. You'll birth me 3 sons by Christmas. The words fell like stones in still water. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Camera phones raised. Mara's face burned as she stood, horror replacing her usual composure. The dustpan trembled in her grip. Mr. Voss. Someone started, but Alexander was already being pulled away by his security team, leaving Mara at the center of a storm of whispers and flashing phones. She backed away, her carefully ordered world crumbling around her. Murmurs followed. Did he just proposition the maid? 3 sons by Christmas? Is he drunk? This will be everywhere by morning. Mara turned and fled, her sensible shoes silent on the marble floor, leaving behind the glittering chaos of Manhattan's elite struggling to process what they'd just witnessed. The night air hit her face as she pushed through the service exit, the sounds of the gala fading behind her. Inside, Alexander was being steered toward a private room, his usual iron control shattered by 1 glass of bourbon and years of pressure. The party continued its mechanical swirl of wealth and influence, but the damage was done. In less than 5 minutes, a carefully maintained reputation had cracked, and a quiet maid's life had been thrown into chaos. Staff scrambled to maintain normalcy, but the energy had shifted. Phones buzzed with messages being sent, social media coming alive with speculation. The ice sculpture Mara had saved earlier stood silent, witness to the unfolding drama, its angel wings catching the light of 100 cameras, documenting the moment the untouchable Alexander Voss finally lost control. The night spun on, crystal glasses clinked, and somewhere in the maze of Manhattan's streets, Mara rushed away from the scene of her humiliation. Behind her, in the glittering ballroom, the whispers grew louder, and the story began to take shape. The night the Ice King of Manhattan melted down and made an impossible demand of a maid who had only been trying to clean up broken glass. Servers continued their choreographed dance with trays of champagne, but now they carried gossip along with drinks. Security guards spoke quietly into earpieces, coordinating Alexander's extraction from the situation. The partygoers, trained by years of social conditioning, maintained their smiles while their fingers flew across phone screens, spreading the news. The Victoria Voss Foundation Gala, meant to celebrate legacy and philanthropy, had just become the scene of something entirely different, a moment of raw humanity breaking through the polished veneer of Manhattan's elite. The carefully constructed walls between classes, between power and service, between control and chaos had cracked. And in that crack, a story was beginning that would shake the foundations of both their worlds. Mara's phone buzzed incessantly as she rode the subway to work. Her hands shook as she scrolled through headlines. Voss CEO's drunken demand, 3 heirs from Maid. Manhattan's Ice King melts down at charity gala. Breaking identity of Voss Maid revealed. She switched her phone off, feeling sick. The familiar marble lobby of Voss Tower offered no comfort today. Security guards watched her pass, their usual nods replaced with curious stares. Miss Hayes? Linda from HR intercepted her before she could reach the service elevator. Come with me, please. Across town, Alexander Voss woke in his penthouse with a sledgehammer pounding in his skull. Sunlight stabbed through floor-to-ceiling windows as his phone chimed repeatedly. He grabbed it, squinting at notifications. The video played automatically, his own voice slightly slurred. "You'll birth me 3 sons by Christmas." Damn it. He hurled the phone onto his silk sheets. The footage showed everything. His uncharacteristic drink, the taunting, and worst of all, his loss of control. Years of carefully maintained reputation shattered in seconds. In HR's sterile conference room, Mara sat rigid while Linda reviewed a file. "Miss Hayes, we need to discuss potential inappropriate relations with Mr. Voss." "There are none," Mara said firmly. "I've barely spoken 10 words to him in 2 years. Yet he singled you out quite specifically last night." "I was cleaning broken glass. Wrong place, wrong time." The door swung open. Alexander stood there, immaculate in a charcoal suit despite his hangover. His presence filled the room like smoke. "Leave us," he commanded. Linda hesitated, then gathered her papers and fled. Mara's heart hammered as Alexander closed the door. He remained standing, towering over her seated form. "This situation requires immediate containment," he said, his voice clipped. "I'm offering you 2 options." Mara lifted her chin. "I'm listening." "Option 1. Resign immediately. We'll provide 3 months' severance." "That's not enough to—" "Option 2. He continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "You agree to a private arrangement. You'll move into my penthouse temporarily until media interest dies down. We control the narrative, protect the company's reputation, and ensure your privacy." "Move in?" Mara stood, her chair scraping back. "That's insane." "It's practical. The press will lose interest if they can't access you." "I have a life, Mr. Voss, a home. A home currently surrounded by photographers." His jaw tightened. "Your address was leaked an hour ago." "By who?" "We're investigating." He stepped closer. "The arrangement would include full legal protection, generous compensation, and guaranteed future employment." "In exchange for what?" Mara's voice sharpened. "Playing house with Manhattan's most eligible bachelor?" Color touched his cheekbones. "This is strictly business. Separate living spaces, clear boundaries. You continue your normal duties, just in a more controlled environment." "Where I'm basically your prisoner. Where you're protected," he corrected. "Think carefully, Miss Hayes. Resignation means no references, no easy path to new employment. The scandal will follow you. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering solutions." His green eyes held hers. "Take time to consider. But not too much time." Mara left Voss Tower in a daze, her mind spinning. She'd worked too hard to lose everything over one drunk billionaire's mistake. But moving into his penthouse? The idea terrified her. Her tiny apartment building loomed ahead. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Miss Hayes, is it true you're carrying the Voss heir? How long has the affair been going on? Did Alexander Voss pay you to seduce him?" Mara ducked into the building's side entrance, her hands trembling as she fumbled with her keys. Inside her apartment, she sank onto her worn couch, buried her face in her hands, and allowed herself one moment of weakness. The walls seemed to close in. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown numbers, probably more reporters. Through her window, she could see camera lenses pointing up from the street. Her sister's medical bills sat on the coffee table. Without this job, without references. Her throat tightened. Alexander's words echoed. "Think carefully." She'd built her life on careful choices, on dignity despite circumstances. Now she faced an impossible decision: resign and lose everything, or enter the lion's den on his terms. A camera flash lit up her living room. They'd found her window. Mara drew the curtains, her sanctuary violated. In the darkness, she pulled out her phone, staring at Alexander's business card. The choice loomed before her: financial ruin or confined safety, freedom to struggle or a gilded cage. Her finger hovered over the number as another camera flashed through her curtains. Mara's heels clicked against marble as she entered Voss Tower at precisely 9 a.m. She'd changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on a modest navy dress that made her feel somewhat armored. Her reflection in the elevator's polished walls showed dark circles under her eyes. The penthouse's morning light poured through windows, making everything gleam. Alexander stood at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms, papers spread before him like battle plans. "Miss Hayes." He gestured to a chair without looking up. "The contracts are ready." Mara sat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. A stack of documents thick as a novel waited before her. "Your legal team was busy," she observed. "Efficiency is crucial." He finally met her gaze. "The situation requires immediate resolution. The situation you created." The words slipped out before she could stop them. His jaw tightened. "We both know my lapse in judgment. The question is how. We move forward." Mara pulled the contract closer, scanning pages. Her eyes caught on phrases: temporary residency, increased compensation package, non-disclosure agreement. Then she found it, buried in Section 12. Family representational duties. What exactly does this mean? She tapped the clause. Standard language. Public appearances, select social functions. Nothing inappropriate. It's deliberately vague. Mara's voice strengthened. "I need specifics." Alexander's fingers drummed once on his desk. "The board requires certain optics. After recent events, they want stability projected, a clear narrative. They want me to play happy family with you." Mara's stomach churned. "To validate your drunken announcement. Within strict boundaries," he said quickly. "Purely symbolic." "And if I refuse?" "Then we return to option 1, immediate resignation." Mara read further, her training in parsing legal documents proving useful. "There's nothing here protecting my privacy from staff, or guaranteeing I can leave if things become difficult." Alexander studied her with new interest. "You understand legal terminology?" "I understand self-preservation." She met his gaze steadily. "I want additional clauses, privacy guarantees, exit options with severance if harassment occurs, and written assurance that family duties never crosses professional lines." A muscle worked in his jaw. "You're negotiating." "I'm protecting myself." Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained firm. "You're not the only one whose reputation matters." Silence stretched between them. Then Alexander reached for his phone. "Gerald, bring up the additional clause templates." To Mara, "What else?" For 30 minutes, they refined terms. Mara insisted on specifics about her freedom of movement, communication rights, and protection from media. Alexander agreed more easily than she expected, though his expression remained unreadable. Finally, he slid the revised contract across his desk. "Satisfied?" Mara signed each page carefully, her signature steady despite her racing heart. "Not satisfied, resigned." "Your suite is prepared. Staff will assist with moving your belongings this afternoon." By 4 p.m., Mara stood in her new quarters, a guest suite larger than her entire apartment. Cream walls, silk curtains, and a bed that could sleep 4. Her few possessions looked lost in the space. Staff moved around her with careful politeness, unpacking her clothes into a walk-in closet bigger than her bathroom at home. Their eyes slid past her, their greetings professionally distant. She was neither staff nor family now, something uncomfortably in between. At 7, a knock announced dinner. Mara followed a housekeeper to the formal dining room, where a table meant for 20 had been set for 2. Alexander sat at one end, his laptop open beside his plate. "Sit," he said without looking up. "Eden's prepared salmon." Mara chose a chair halfway down the table's length. A server immediately appeared with wine. "No, thank you," they said simultaneously. Their eyes met briefly before both looked away. The first course arrived, soup in delicate bowls. Silverware clinked in silence. Alexander typed one-handed between bites. "The media statement goes out tomorrow," he said finally. "You'll want to avoid windows for a few days. I know how to be invisible." Mara stirred her soup. "I've had practice." He glanced up sharply. Something flickered in his expression. Curiosity? "Your background file mentioned foster care." "My background isn't relevant to our arrangement. Everything about you is relevant now." He closed his laptop. "We're linked, like it or not. Temporarily." Mara set down her spoon. "Until you fix your PR problem. Until we fix it." His voice hardened slightly. "This only works if we present a united front." The main course arrived. Perfectly grilled salmon, asparagus, roasted potatoes. They ate in tense silence, the space between them heavy with unspoken words. Mara watched Alexander covertly. His movements were precise, controlled. A man accustomed to power. But something in his posture suggested strain, like Atlas bearing the world's weight. "The staff will adjust to this arrangement," he said suddenly. "Give it time." "Will you?" The question surprised them both. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. "I adjust to whatever circumstances require." "How comforting." Mara pushed away her half-finished plate. "May I be excused?" "This is your home now, Miss Hayes. You don't need permission." "This isn't my home." She stood, smoothing her dress. "It's my prison with better furniture." She left him sitting there, straight-backed and silent, the salmon getting cold on his plate. In her suite, Mara leaned against the door, heart pounding. Beyond the windows, Manhattan glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and untouchable. Her phone buzzed. Another reporter. She turned it off, went to the window, and stared at her reflection overlaying the city lights. A woman caught between worlds, neither servant nor equal, trapped by one man's moment of weakness and her own need to survive. The salmon sat heavy in her stomach as she changed for bed, her nightgown looking shabby against the luxury sheets. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new boundaries to navigate. But tonight, in this gilded cage, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she'd agreed to. After the strained dinner, Alexander appeared at her suite door with 2 sheets of paper, handwritten in precise strokes. "House protocols," he said, extending them. "For mutual comfort." Mara accepted the pages, scanning them in the hallway light. His writing was as controlled as everything else about him, neat lines detailing shared space expectations. "Knock before entering any office or private room," she read aloud. "Quiet hours between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Kitchen access unrestricted, but meals preferably at scheduled times." "Is that unreasonable?" There was a hint of challenge in his tone. "No." She looked up. "But I have conditions too." "Of course you do." His mouth twitched, almost amused. "Your office?" They walked to the small study she'd been assigned, where Mara retrieved her own notepad. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote, but her writing was steady. "First," she said, "no assumptions of intimacy. The board's family duties clause doesn't mean what they want it to mean." "Agreed." His response was immediate. "Second, I maintain the right to refuse any request or situation that makes me uncomfortable." "Reasonable." Third, you protect my reputation as vigorously as your own. No implications of impropriety, no suggestive comments to the press. Alexander took her list, reading it carefully. These are fair terms. He placed both papers on her desk. Anything else? Yes. Mara met his gaze. Why don't you drink? The question caught him off guard. His shoulders stiffened. That's personal. Everything about me is in your background check. Fair exchange? Before he could answer, the lights flickered. A low rumble of thunder rattled the windows. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke, sheets of rain hammering against glass. Then darkness fell. Partial outage? Alexander said calmly. Backup generators will... The emergency lights sputtered to life, casting everything in dim amber. Through the windows, half of Manhattan still glowed while their section remained dark. I should check on staff, Mara said, already moving. They know protocols. They're people, not protocols. She found the housekeeping staff quickly, ensuring everyone had emergency lights and checking that sensitive areas were secure. When she returned upstairs, she noticed light under Alexander's office door. She knocked. Enter. He sat behind his desk, laptop running on battery power, surrounded by candles that cast dancing shadows on the walls. Staff settled? Yes. Kitchen secure. Security systems transferred to backup power. She hesitated in the doorway. You didn't answer my question earlier. Alexander's fingers stilled on the keyboard. For a long moment, only rain and thunder filled the silence. Control matters to me, he said finally. Alcohol removes it. 1 glass at the gala removed enough. Hence why I don't drink. He looked up. Your turn. Why do you hate attention? Mara drifted to the window, watching lightning split the sky. Foster care teaches you to be invisible. Attention usually means trouble. Yet you're handling this situation remarkably well. Am I? She turned. I signed a contract to live with a stranger because paparazzi made my apartment unlivable. That's not handling things well. That's surviving. You negotiated terms, demanded respect. His voice softened slightly. That's more than survival. Thunder crashed closer, making the windows rattle. In the candlelight, Alexander's usual sharp edges seemed softer, more human. May I sit? Mara asked. He gestured to a leather chair. She sank into it, suddenly exhausted. I've never lived anywhere this high up, she admitted. The storm feels different up here. Closer to the sky, he agreed. More immediate. They sat in surprisingly comfortable silence, watching lightning dance between skyscrapers. The rain created shifting patterns on the windows, and the candles made the office feel almost intimate. Why did you help with the power outage? Alexander asked suddenly. It's not your job anymore. Habit, I suppose. I take care of things. People. Even when they don't deserve it. Mara studied him in the flickering light. Do you think you don't deserve care? Before he could answer, the main lights hummed back to life. The spell broke. They both blinked in the sudden brightness, shifting away from the vulnerability of darkness. Alexander stood, straightening his jacket. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? Checking on everyone, including me. Mara rose, smoothing her skirt. Habit, remember? They walked to the door together, an unfamiliar awareness crackling between them like residual lightning. Good night, Miss Hayes. Good night, Mr. Voss. She turned toward her suite, feeling his eyes on her back until she rounded the corner. In her room, she found the house protocols still clutched in her hand, his precise writing slightly smudged where her fingers had gripped too tight. The storm continued outside, but inside something had shifted. Like the lightning, it was brief and brilliant, and like the thunder, its echo lingered long after the moment passed. Morning light filtered through rain-streaked windows as maintenance crews cleared fallen branches from the penthouse terrace. The storm had left its mark: scattered leaves, puddles in unexpected places, and a lingering humidity that made everything feel slightly off-kilter. Mara moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency, but something had changed. Every sound from Alexander's wing of the penthouse made her pause. The shower running, dress shoes on hardwood, the quiet murmur of his voice on early calls. She caught herself listening for his movements, mapping his presence without meaning to. "Coffee, Miss Hayes?" Maria, one of the kitchen staff, offered her a steaming cup. "Thank you." Mara accepted it gratefully, noting how Maria's eyes didn't quite meet hers. The staff's behavior had shifted subtly since her status change, more formal, less familiar. Alexander emerged from his office wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. He nodded briefly in her direction before checking his phone. "The board's called an emergency meeting," he announced to no one in particular. "I'll be late tonight." Mara watched him leave, noting the tension in his shoulders. As soon as the elevator doors closed, the whispers started. Did you see how he looked at her? She must have planned this somehow. Gold digger, obviously. Probably threw herself at him at the gala. Mara gripped her coffee cup tighter, pretending not to hear. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. She'd earned her position through hard work, not manipulation. Across town, Alexander sat across from his mother in her perfectly appointed office at the Victoria Voss Foundation. Evelyn Voss was elegant in navy silk, her silver hair swept into an immaculate chignon. "The board is restless," Evelyn said, stirring her tea. "Your little announcement has made them nervous about succession planning." "There was no announcement," Alexander replied tersely. "It was an unfortunate comment made under unusual circumstances." "Perhaps, but it's opened an interesting door." Evelyn's smile was careful. "An heir would stabilize things considerably. The trust requires it eventually." "There's nothing between Miss Hayes and me." "No? Then why move her into the penthouse?" "To control the narrative and protect the company's interests." Evelyn set down her cup with a delicate clink. "Alexander, darling, you've never needed to protect anyone before. It's rather telling that you started with her." He stood abruptly. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. "Consider what I said," Evelyn called after him. "Legacy requires certain sacrifices." The board meeting dragged for hours, full of pointed questions about family planning and stable leadership. By the time Alexander returned home, the city lights were twinkling against a velvet sky. He found Mara in the library, papers spread across a mahogany desk. The contract lay open before her, sections highlighted in yellow, margins filled with neat notes. "Problems with the terms?" he asked, making her jump slightly. "Questions mainly." She gestured to her notes. "The family representation clause is troublingly vague, and there's nothing about my rights regarding public appearances or media statements." Alexander loosened his tie and sat across from her. "What would you add?" She blinked, surprised by his willingness to listen. "Clear guidelines about what constitutes family representation. Protection from being forced into public statements or appearances. The right to maintain my privacy even while living here." He studied her for a moment. In the library's warm lighting, her determination was striking. No trace of the timid Maid remained. "Draft the amendments," he said finally. "I'll have legal review them tomorrow." Just like that. "You've proven yourself reasonable, and correct, in this case. The terms should be clearer." Mara sat back, watching him carefully. "Your mother contacted you today, didn't she?" His expression tightened. "How did you know?" "You're more tense than usual, and the board meeting was suddenly scheduled after weeks of nothing." You're observant. I had to be, in foster care. Reading people meant survival. Alexander's features softened slightly. She suggested an heir would solve our problems. Our problems or yours? Both, apparently. He stood, straightening his cuffs. Work on those amendments. We'll review them tomorrow. Mara nodded, already turning back to her notes. Good night, Mr. Voss. Alexander. He corrected quietly. After last night's storm, I think we're past surnames. She looked up, surprised again. Then, good night, Alexander. He paused at the door. Good night, Mara. Later, in her suite, Mara stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of the city. Somewhere above, she knew Alexander was probably still awake, maybe looking at the same city lights. The forced proximity was doing strange things to her perception. She noticed too much now, the scent of his cologne lingering in shared spaces, the way his voice changed when he was tired, how his careful control slipped sometimes when their eyes met. In his own rooms, Alexander stood at his window, city lights reflecting off glass. He could see Mara's amendments on his tablet, a clear logic and quiet strength evident in every proposed change. She wasn't what he'd expected. Not a victim, not an opportunist, but something far more dangerous. A woman who saw through his armor and wasn't afraid to challenge him. The penthouse settled around them, creaking softly as the night deepened. Neither slept well, both acutely aware of the other's presence just floors away, and both trying desperately to ignore what that awareness might mean. Morning light spilled across Alexander's desk as he reviewed quarterly projections. His tablet displayed a sea of red numbers, concerning, but not catastrophic. Yet. He straightened his tie, a gesture more habit than necessity. In the east wing, Mara moved quietly through her morning routine. Dust cloths whispered across antique surfaces while her mind wandered to the amendments she'd drafted. The penthouse felt different in daylight, less intimidating, more like the home it was meant to be. She paused at Alexander's office door, hearing his voice rise in frustration. The board meeting is at 2, Caleb. I've handled the situation. Mara froze, recognizing the name of Alexander's half-brother. Your little Maid scandal isn't going away. Caleb's voice crackled through the speaker. The trust has specific requirements, which I'm well aware of. Alexander cut in. Stay out of it. Can't do that, brother. Your failure to secure the legacy affects all of us. Maybe it's time for new leadership. The call ended abruptly. Through the crack in the door, Mara saw Alexander grip his desk, knuckles white. Hours later, she carried financial documents toward the private family wing. Voices drifted from Evelyn's study, urgent, angry whispers that made her slow her steps. The clause is clear, Caleb was saying. If Alexander fails to produce an heir by his 35th birthday, control shifts to the next viable male heir. You're manipulating the intent, Evelyn hissed. Your father never meant... My father knew. Alexander would never secure the legacy. Too cold, too controlled. The trust protects the family's interests. By handing everything to you, Alexander built this empire. And I'll inherit it unless he proves he can continue the bloodline. 7 months, mother. Then it's mine. Mara backed away silently, heart pounding. The documents could wait. She hurried down the corridor, mind racing with implications. 7 months, Alexander's birthday, the trust, the sudden pressure for heirs made terrible sense. Evening settled over Manhattan. Mara found herself in the kitchen, hands shaking slightly as she prepared chamomile tea. The secret sat heavy in her chest. You're still up. She startled at Alexander's voice. He stood in the doorway, tie loose, jacket discarded. Exhaustion lined his face. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. Tea? He nodded, dropping into a kitchen chair. She noticed his usual perfect posture was gone, replaced by bone-deep weariness. "Rough day?" she asked, setting a cup before him. "Board meetings, numbers, family expectations." He took a sip. The usual burdens of empire. Mara leaned against the counter, studying him. "You don't have to carry it alone." His eyes met hers, startled by the gentle observation. "Don't I? It's what I was raised for. Being raised for something doesn't make it right." Alexander's laugh was hollow. "You sound like my mother before father died. She used to say legacy shouldn't cost happiness." Smart woman. She changed her tune after he passed. Now it's all about duty and bloodlines. Mara's hands tightened around her cup, the secret burning. But it wasn't her place to reveal what she'd overheard. Not yet. "What do you want?" she asked softly. "What?" "Not what your father wanted, or what the board wants. What do you want?" Alexander stared into his tea like it held answers. "I don't know anymore. Control, maybe. The freedom to choose." "Those sound like opposite things. Welcome to my world." He offered a tired smile. "Thank you for the tea, Mara." She recognized the dismissal. "Good night, Alexander." Later, in his private office, Alexander stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below, a glittering empire of glass and steel. His father's voice echoed in his memories. "Legacy is everything, son. Without it, we're nothing." He pressed his forehead to the cool glass. 34 years of molding himself to expectations, and for what? A lonely penthouse, a board that doubted him, and a brother waiting to steal it all. His thoughts drifted to Mara, to her quiet question. "What do you want?" No one had asked him that in years. The answer terrified him more than losing the company. 3 floors below, Mara lay awake in her suite, the overheard conversation playing on repeat. 7 months. An heir or everything falls to Caleb. The weight of Alexander's future pressed against her chest. She rolled onto her side, watching city lights dance across her ceiling. The man she'd seen tonight, tired, vulnerable, seeking comfort in tea and quiet conversation, didn't deserve this manipulation. But telling him meant admitting she'd eavesdropped, risking her position and possibly making things worse. The penthouse creaked and settled around them, keeper of secrets and legacy both. In their separate spaces, neither slept well. Alexander haunted by expectations, Mara by the knowledge that could shatter them all. Outside, Manhattan's lights twinkled like stars, indifferent to the drama unfolding behind glass walls. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new secrets, new moments of unexpected connection. But for now, the night held them in separate orbits, each lost in thoughts of duty, desire, and the growing cost of silence. Through it all, the city kept its relentless pace, a reminder that beyond these walls, beyond family legacies and trust clauses, life moved forward. The question was whether they would move with it, or remain trapped in the patterns set by those who came before. Morning light streamed through the penthouse windows as Mara arranged fresh flowers in the foyer. Her movements were precise, measured, each stem placed with care despite her churning thoughts about yesterday's revelation. The elevator dinged. Alexander emerged, already on his phone, briefcase in hand. His suit was darker today, his expression tight with concentration. He nodded briefly at her as he passed. "The Morrison meeting's been moved up." He spoke into his phone. "Have the projections ready in an hour." Mara watched him disappear down the hallway, noting the tension in his shoulders. The weight of the secret felt heavier with each passing day. By mid-afternoon, storm clouds gathered over Manhattan. Alexander returned earlier than expected, his tie loosened, running a hand through his usually perfect hair. "Mara?" his voice carried down the hall. "Do you have a moment?" She found him in his office, surrounded by scattered papers. "Yes." "There's an old family file. Leather portfolio, probably in the library. Would you help me look?" The penthouse library was intimate, all dark wood and leather-bound books. Mara searched the higher shelves while Alexander checked the lower cabinets. The space between them felt charged, awareness crackling like static. "Maybe behind these?" She stretched up, fingertips grazing leather spines. Alexander moved closer, reaching past her. His chest brushed her back, his breath warm against her neck. Time suspended. Neither moved. "Sorry," he murmured, but didn't step away. Mara's heart thundered. She could feel the heat of him, smell his cologne mixed with coffee and stress. His hand remained frozen above hers. A door slammed somewhere in the penthouse. They jerked apart, the moment shattering. "Found it," Alexander said roughly, pulling a portfolio from a lower shelf. He cleared his throat. "Thank you for your help." Hours later, they sat across from each other at dinner. Rain pattered against windows, creating a cocoon of privacy. Alexander pushed food around his plate. "Tell me about yourself," he said suddenly. "Your life before here." Mara set down her fork. "Not much to tell." "I doubt that's true." She studied him, weighing trust against caution. "Foster care, mostly. Different homes, different rules. You learn to adapt." "That must have been difficult." "It taught me survival." She traced the rim of her water glass. "How to read people, stay invisible when needed." "And now? Now I work, save money, try to build something stable." She thought of her sister's medical bills, but kept that private. "For someone specific?" Her hesitation answered for her. "Family," he pressed gently. "Someone I care about." She met his gaze. Not everyone has a trust fund to fall back on. He absorbed that, something softening in his expression. "No, they don't." The conversation drifted to safer topics, books they'd read, places they'd seen. Mara found herself sharing more than intended, drawn in by his quiet attention. He listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his own careful observations of her. When dinner ended, neither moved immediately. The rain created shadows on the walls, intimate and strange. "Thank you," Alexander said finally. "For sharing that. Thank you for asking." They rose, cleared plates, moved toward their separate wings. But their steps were slow, reluctant. Mara paused at her hallway, glancing back. Alexander stood at his, watching her. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the space. Something unspoken hung between them, delicate as spider silk. "Good night," she said softly. "Good night, Mara." In her room, Mara lay awake, replaying the library moment. The solid warmth of him behind her, the caught breath, the endless second before they separated. She touched her neck where his breath had been. 3 floors above, Alexander stood at his window, watching rain trace patterns on glass. He remembered the subtle floral scent of her hair, the way she'd gone still when he reached past her, the quiet strength in her voice as she spoke of survival. Sleep eluded them both. The penthouse creaked and settled, full of unspoken words and growing awareness. Outside, rain washed the city clean, while inside, 2 people lay awake, thinking of moments almost brave enough to change everything. The night deepened. Manhattan's lights blurred through rain-streaked windows. In their separate rooms, Mara and Alexander faced the same realization, that walls built over years could crumble in seconds, that safety might be found in the most unexpected places. But morning would come soon enough. For now, they existed in this liminal space between what was and what could be, each afraid to name the feeling growing between them, each privately wondering if the other lay awake too, remembering. The rain continued its gentle percussion, a lullaby for secrets and almost confessions. Time stretched like honey, sweet and slow, as two people who had learned to guard their hearts found themselves wondering what it might mean to let someone in. Snow fell in thick curtains outside the penthouse windows. Mara watched the white swirl, a weather alert lighting up her phone. Her morning duties would be lighter, with half the staff unable to make it in. Alexander emerged from his office, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Meetings cancelled, roads are closing. I heard. Mara continued arranging fresh flowers, hyper-aware of his presence. The weather service says it could be the worst storm this winter. He nodded, checking his phone. The domesticity of the moment felt strange, intimate. Usually by now he'd be gone, leaving her to work in solitude. Mara moved to the living room, determined to stay busy. She'd been meaning to reorganize the built-in shelves, cluttered with business magazines and old family mementos. A stack of leather-bound boxes caught her attention. As she lifted one, it slipped from her grasp. The lid popped open, spilling contents across the floor. Journals scattered, their pages fanned out like fallen leaves. "I'm so sorry." She dropped to her knees, gathering them quickly. "It's fine." Alexander knelt beside her, helping collect the leather-bound books. His fingers brushed hers as they reached for the same journal. They both froze. The touch lingered. "These were my father's," he said quietly, running his thumb over the embossed initials. His private thoughts, business plans, expectations for the empire. A bitter note crept into his voice. Mara sat back on her heels, sensing something important in his tone. "You don't sound fond of them. They're a record of everything I failed to be." He opened one, showing neat columns of notes. Every deviation from his plan was marked, every disappointment catalogued. Snow ticked against windows. They sat on the floor, surrounded by scattered pieces of Alexander's past. He wanted an heir molded in his image. Alexander continued. Cold, calculated, the perfect CEO from birth. He gave a hollow laugh. "I remember crying once, after falling off my horse. I was 7. He made me stand in his office for hours, teaching me that Voss men don't show weakness." Mara's heart ached. She saw the little boy in him then, still carrying those wounds. "That's cruel," she said softly. It was preparation. Alexander's jaw tightened. For boardrooms, for rivals, for a world where emotion is leverage against you. And now I run his empire exactly as he wanted. Perfect control, no weaknesses. He met her eyes, until that night at the gala. Heat bloomed in Mara's chest. The first crack in his armor had been because of her. "One drink," she said. "That's hardly a scandal." "It wasn't the drink." His voice dropped. "It was seeing you, really seeing you. It unsettled something." The air grew thick between them. Snow continued falling outside, cocooning them in white silence. Hours passed. The storm intensified, transforming Manhattan into a blur of white. They'd migrated to the kitchen for tea, then to the living room where a chessboard sat ready. "Do you play?" Alexander asked. Mara nodded. "I learned in foster care. It kept me quiet, out of trouble." They settled into leather chairs, the board between them. The game provided structure, a safe way to study each other. Alexander played methodically, each move calculated. Mara was more intuitive, surprising him with unexpected strategies. "Check," she said softly. He studied the board, a smile tugging at his mouth. "Impressive. I'm full of surprises." Their eyes met across the board. Something shifted in the air, like a key turning in a lock. Alexander stood slowly, moving around the table. Mara rose to meet him, drawn by some invisible force. They stood close enough to share breath. "I should tell you something," he said, voice rough. "I've never been intimate with anyone." His hands clenched. "The papers call me emotionally sterile. They're not entirely wrong." Mara touched his cheek gently. "There's nothing wrong with waiting." It wasn't waiting. It was fear. His eyes closed briefly, of losing control, of being vulnerable. "And now I'm terrified." He leaned into her touch. "But for the first time I want to be." The kiss, when it came, was achingly gentle. Alexander's hands trembled as they cupped her face. Mara steadied him, showing him how to soften, how to yield. When they parted, both were breathing hard. The storm raged outside, but in here, something warm and fragile was blooming. "We should take this slowly," Mara whispered. Alexander pressed his forehead to hers. "Yes. One step at a time." "Yes." They separated reluctantly, the space between them charged with possibility. The chess game lay forgotten, pieces scattered like the day's revelations. "Good night, Alexander." "Good night, Mara." They retreated to their separate rooms, each carrying the memory of that kiss, that confession, that moment when walls began to crumble. The storm howled outside, but inside, two hearts beat with new rhythm, new hope, new fear. In the darkness, Mara touched her lips, still feeling the gentle pressure of his kiss. Alexander stood at his window, watching snow transform his city into something pure and new, like the feeling unfurling in his chest. Morning light sparkled off fresh snow, turning Manhattan into a glittering wonderland. Mara stood at the kitchen window, coffee warming her hands, reliving last night's kiss. The memory made her cheeks flush. "Good morning." She turned. Alexander stood in the doorway, his usual impeccable suit slightly rumpled. Their eyes met, held, then skittered away. "Coffee," she offered. Proud, her voice stayed steady. "Please." Their fingers brushed during the handoff. Such a small touch, yet it sent electricity through them both. Alexander cleared his throat. "About last night?" His phone buzzed sharply. His expression darkened as he read the message. "What's wrong?" "Emergency board meeting." He ran a hand through his hair. "Stocks dropping. Rumors circulating." "What kind of rumors?" "The kind my brother excels at spreading." His jaw tightened. "Stay here, please. I'll handle this." Mara set down her cup. "Let me help. This isn't your battle. I'm already part of it." She stepped closer. "I've managed complex households for years. I notice things, patterns. Let me be useful." Alexander studied her face. "This could get ugly. I'm stronger than I look." He nodded slowly. "All right, but first sign of trouble. I'll be careful," she promised. They worked together through the morning, Mara helping organize files while Alexander made calls. She noticed how he softened his voice when speaking to her, how his hand would brush her shoulder as he passed. Around 2, shouts erupted from the street below. Mara went to the window and froze. Dozens of paparazzi crowded the sidewalk, cameras aimed upward. "Alexander Voss and Mystery Woman. Secret romance confirmed." "Baby bump watch. Voss heir on the way." The headlines screamed from their phones. Flashbulbs popped like lightning. Mara's chest tightened. The room spun. She couldn't breathe. "Mara." Alexander's voice seemed far away. "Mara, look at me." She felt his hands on her shoulders, turning her away from the window. Her lungs wouldn't work. "Focus on my voice," he said softly. "You're safe here. Breathe with me." He demonstrated. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. Gradually her breathing steadied. She realized she was clutching his shirt. "I'm sorry." she whispered. "Don't apologize." His thumb stroked her cheek. "I should have better security protocols in place." "It's not that." She pressed her face into his chest. "I'm not ashamed of this, whatever this is, but the attention overwhelms you." "Yes." He held her closer. "We'll face it together, at your pace." They stayed like that, swaying slightly, until her heart settled. When she looked up, his expression was so tender it made her ache. "Alexander." He kissed her then, different from last night. Deeper, hungrier, but still achingly gentle. She melted into him. They broke apart, breathing hard. "We should talk," he said. "Yes." They moved to the living room, sitting close on the sofa. The city glittered beyond the windows, but their world had narrowed to this space, this moment. "I want you," he said simply. "But I need you to understand what you're getting into. My world is complicated, dangerous." His fingers laced with hers. "The board, the media, my family, they'll try to use you against me. And I've never—" He swallowed. "I've never let anyone this close." "I know." She squeezed his hand. "We'll go slowly. Set boundaries. Figure it out together." "You're not afraid?" "Terrified," she admitted. "But some things are worth the risk." His kiss was answer enough. This time, neither pulled away. Hands explored carefully, learning curves and angles. When he pulled back to ask, "Are you sure?" her yes was breathless but certain. "Protection," she managed between kisses. "Top drawer. I prepared, hoping." She smiled against his mouth. Presumptuous. Optimistic. They moved to his bedroom, where moonlight painted everything silver. Each piece of clothing removed was a question asked and answered. Each touch was permission granted. Alexander's hands trembled. "Show me," he whispered. "Tell me what you need." So she did, guiding him with gentle words and softer touches. His eagerness to learn, to please, made her heart swell. When they finally joined, his gasp held wonder. "Okay?" she asked. "Perfect," he breathed. "You're perfect." They moved together slowly, finding their rhythm. His control cracked beautifully, showing the raw need beneath. She held him through it, whispering encouragement, showing him it was safe to fall apart. After, they lay tangled in silk sheets, her head on his chest. His heartbeat was still rapid under her ear. "Stay," he murmured, already half asleep. She pressed a kiss over his heart. "I'm not going anywhere." They drifted off together as snow began falling again, adding another layer of white to the silent city. For the first time in years, Alexander slept without dreams of boardrooms or his father's disappointment. For the first time ever, Mara felt completely, utterly safe. Morning light filtered through the penthouse windows, casting warm patterns across tangled sheets. Mara woke first, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar luxury surrounding her. Then she felt Alexander's arm draped across her waist, his breath steady against her neck, and remembered. She shifted carefully, studying his sleeping face. Without his usual mask of control, he looked younger, almost vulnerable. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and she resisted the urge to brush it back. Alexander's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he just looked at her, something soft and wondering in his gaze. Then awareness crept in, and she saw him start to rebuild his walls. "Good morning," she said quickly before he could retreat completely. "Morning." His voice was rough with sleep. He cleared his throat. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes." She smiled, trying to ease the awkwardness. "Though your mattress is ridiculous, it's like sleeping on a cloud." "Only the best." The phrase sounded automatic, rehearsed, but his hand was still gentle on her hip. They dressed separately, an unspoken agreement to give each other space. When Mara entered the kitchen, Alexander was already there, making coffee. He'd put on one of his immaculate suits, armor against the day ahead. "I can make breakfast," she offered. "You don't have to." "I want to." She moved around him, gathering ingredients. "The board meeting's at 9?" He nodded, watching her crack eggs into a bowl. "It shouldn't be long, standard quarterly review." But his tension was visible in the set of his shoulders, the way he gripped his coffee cup. Mara wanted to comfort him, but wasn't sure of her place anymore. Last night's intimacy felt suddenly fragile in the morning light. She served them both omelettes, and they ate in a silence that swung between comfortable and charged. Their fingers brushed when she passed him the salt, sending electricity through her skin. "About last night," he began. "We don't have to. I don't regret it." His words were careful, measured, but things are complicated right now. "I understand." She did, even as her heart ached. He left shortly after, the ghost of his kiss lingering on her cheek. Mara threw herself into work, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. Around 11, voices from the service corridor caught her attention. She recognized Caleb's assistant speaking to someone in hushed tones. "Documents are ready. CFO signed off. Board won't know what hit them." Mara's stomach clenched. She moved closer, but they walked away before she could hear more. During lunch, she met Anna in the staff break room. Her friend took one look at her face and pulled her into a corner. "Spill!" Anna demanded. "What's wrong?" Mara glanced around before whispering, "I think something's happening with the board. I overheard. There might be false documents, something to hurt Alexander." "Wouldn't be surprised." Anna's expression darkened. "Caleb's been sniffing around, asking weird questions about financial records." "I'm worried," Mara admitted. "Alexander's already under so much pressure, and now—" "You care about him." It wasn't a question. "More than I should." Anna squeezed her hand. "Trust your instincts. You're good at reading situations. It's why you're so good at this job." The afternoon dragged. Mara noticed more suspicious activity. Staff members she didn't recognize accessing private areas, hushed phone calls, meaningful glances. The atmosphere felt thick with conspiracy. When Alexander finally returned after 7, his face was pale with fury. He barely acknowledged her, striding straight to his office and shutting the door. Mara waited an hour before knocking softly. "Alexander, I brought tea." A pause. "Come in." He stood at the window, silhouetted against the city lights. His tie was loose, jacket discarded. "What happened?" she asked, setting down the tea. "Someone's trying to destroy everything I've built." His voice was cold. "Forged documents suggesting I've been embezzling funds, manipulating stock prices. Professional work. It'll take time to prove they're fake." "Caleb." Alexander's head snapped toward her. "What do you know about Caleb?" "Just suspicions. I've noticed things." He ran a hand through his hair, agitated. "I can't discuss this. Not now. Not with me," she finished quietly. "It's not personal, but I need to focus. I can't afford distractions." The word stung. "Is that what last night was? A distraction?" Mara, "No, I understand." She stepped back. "You need space to handle this. I won't get in your way." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." For a moment, she thought he might cross the room, take her in his arms, tell her they'd face this together. Instead, he said, "Thank you for the tea." Mara nodded and left, closing the door softly behind her. In her suite, she changed into pajamas and curled up in bed, trying not to remember how it felt to fall asleep in his arms just last night. Down the hall, Alexander stared at the untouched tea growing cold on his desk, wrestling with the urge to go to her. But the stakes were too high, the threats too real. He couldn't risk letting his guard down again, couldn't risk her getting caught in the crossfire. So they slept apart, each lying awake, separated by walls and fears and the growing certainty that something darker than family rivalry was unfolding in the shadows of Voss Global. Morning light filtered through the penthouse windows, but it brought no warmth. Mara moved through her duties like a ghost, hyper-aware of Alexander's absence. He'd left before dawn, his breakfast untouched. The staff's whispers followed her. Nancy, who usually chatted during cleaning rounds, suddenly found excuses to work alone. Even the security team's eyes held something different, suspicion where there had once been respect. Her phone buzzed. Anna's text made her stomach drop. "Check TMZ now." The headlines hit like physical blows. Voss Maid secret payoff. Below were grainy photos of her walking near the building, strategically edited to make it appear she was meeting someone. Caleb's face was circled in red. Sources claim the mysterious maid who captured Alexander Voss's attention was planted by his own brother. The article read, "Inside sources confirm regular payments." Mara's hands shook. She had never spoken to Caleb outside of basic staff interactions. The implications made her physically ill. By noon, the story had exploded. Staff openly stared when she passed. Someone had printed the article and left it in the break room, her face circled in red marker. She found Alexander in his office, surrounded by papers and looking haunted. When she entered, he didn't look up. "Alexander, please." Her voice cracked. "You know these stories aren't true." He finally met her eyes, and the doubt there shattered something inside her. "Do I?" "How can you even ask that? After everything?" "Everything what?" His voice was tired. "One night, a few conversations. I barely know you, Mara." "That's not fair." She stepped closer. "You know me better than anyone here. You know I would never. What I know is that my brother is trying to destroy my company. What I know is that suddenly there are photos of you near his office building from last month. What I know is that nothing makes sense anymore." He rubbed his temples. "If you have proof these accusations are false, show me." "Proof?" Tears burned her eyes. "The only proof I have is every moment we've shared, every truth I've told you. But that's not enough, is it?" Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. The color drained from his face as he read the message. "What is it?" "Bank records." His voice was hollow. "A transfer from an offshore account to yours, dated 3 months ago, right before you started working here." "That's impossible. I've never—" "The board is demanding action." He wouldn't look at her. "The arrangement is terminated, effective immediately. HR will process your exit." The world tilted sideways. "Alexander, please don't make this harder." His knuckles were white on the desk. "Security will escort you to pack your things." She stared at him. This man who'd held her so tenderly just 2 nights ago, now as cold as his marble offices. "You're a coward." He flinched but said nothing. The next hour passed in a blur. She packed methodically, refusing to cry as security watched. Staff whispered behind their hands. Someone had already removed her photo from the employee wall. As she wheeled her suitcase towards the elevator, she caught a glimpse of Alexander watching from his office doorway. For a moment, their eyes met. She saw conflict there, pain, maybe even regret. But he turned away first. The drive to her apartment felt endless. When she arrived, her hands trembled so badly she dropped her keys twice. The lock was already broken. Her tiny sanctuary had been ransacked. Drawers emptied, photos scattered, walls spray-painted with crude words. Paparazzi had found her address. She sank to the floor, finally letting the tears come. Everything she'd built, Everything she'd protected, shattered in a day. Her phone buzzed. More notifications, more accusations, more lies. With shaking fingers, she dialed Anna's number. "I need help," she whispered when her friend answered. "Where are you? I'm coming right now." "They destroyed everything, Anna." Her voice broke. "The apartment, my reputation, my job. Listen to me." Anna's voice was fierce. "You're staying with me until we figure this out. Pack what you can salvage. I'm 10 minutes away." Mara looked around her violated apartment at the ruins of her careful life. On her phone screen, another news alert flashed. "Voss Global distances itself from scandal. Maid terminated." She thought of Alexander's face when he read those bank records, how quickly years of her proven loyalty crumbled under manufactured evidence, how easily he'd believed the worst of her. The sound of footsteps and cameras clicking outside her window sent her moving. She grabbed her emergency bag, the one she'd kept packed since foster care, and added a few salvageable items. Her hands brushed the small journal where she'd been recording everything she'd noticed about Caleb's suspicious activities. She tucked it deep in her bag. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number, but she recognized the Manhattan area code. She let it go to voicemail, already knowing it would be another reporter. Voices grew, louder outside her door. More cameras, more questions, more accusations. She huddled in her bathroom, the only room without windows, and waited for Anna. A text lit up her phone. "I'm outside. Run to the black Honda. Don't stop." Mara took one last look at her apartment, at the life she'd built so carefully. Then she ran, ignoring the shouts and camera flashes, diving into Anna's car. As they sped away, she caught a glimpse of her building in the rearview mirror, swarming with reporters. Somewhere across town, Alexander was probably in his office, protected by security and wealth, believing she'd betrayed him. "You're shaking," Anna said softly. "I trusted him." The words felt like glass in her throat. "I thought he was different." Anna reached over and squeezed her hand. "We'll figure this out. You're not alone." Mara nodded, clutching her bag with its hidden journal. She'd lost everything today, her job, her home, her heart. But as they drove toward Anna's apartment, one thought crystallized through her pain. She would not let them bury the truth. Sunlight crept through Anna's living room window, finding Mara curled on the couch. She'd barely slept, her mind racing through everything she'd witnessed at the penthouse. Small details that hadn't seemed important before now glowed like breadcrumbs in her memory. "Coffee?" Anna appeared with 2 steaming mugs. "You look like you're plotting something." "I am." Mara accepted the cup, pulling her laptop closer. "I kept copies of everything." Being head of household maintenance meant having access to schedules, staff rotations, and endless email chains. She'd archived everything meticulously, a habit from foster care, where documentation meant protection. "Look at this." She pulled up an email thread from 3 months ago. The CFO requested night access to accounting, but the security logs show Caleb's assistant entering instead. Anna leaned in. "Could be nothing." "Maybe, but watch this pattern." Mara opened more files. Every Tuesday night for 6 weeks, same thing. Always when Alexander was traveling. She'd noticed it because she'd had to adjust cleaning schedules around these late visits. At the time, it had seemed like normal corporate operations. Across town, Alexander stood at his penthouse window, staring at the city without seeing it. The space felt wrong without Mara's presence. No soft footsteps in the hallway, no quiet humming from the kitchen, no warmth in his bed. Dr. Layla's office provided no escape from his thoughts an hour later. "You're punishing yourself," she observed, noting his disheveled appearance. "I deserve it." He hadn't slept either. "I let fear overrule evidence." "What evidence?" 7 years of impeccable service, her integrity when negotiating the contract, the way she— He swallowed hard. The way she touched me that night, like I mattered beyond my name. You're speaking about intimacy, Dr. Layla noted. Let's explore why that frightens you so deeply. Back at Anna's apartment, Mara was deep in digital archaeology. The bank transfer document they're using, the metadata shows it was created last week, not 3 months ago. Anna whistled. Can you prove that? Better. Mara pulled out her phone. I have photos of the CFO's office from when we did deep cleaning. Look at his desk calendar. Meetings with Caleb's lawyers that aren't in the official schedule. She'd photographed everything during cleaning. Standard procedure for ensuring items were returned to their exact positions. Now those images revealed a conspiracy's skeleton. In Dr. Layla's office, Alexander paced. My father taught me control equals safety. When my mother left, he said it was because he'd shown weakness. And Mara made you feel terrified. The admission felt like gravel in his throat. When she touched me, when she saw past my walls, I've never been so scared. So when accusations arose, I retreated to control. His voice cracked. I chose fear over faith. Mara's investigation led her to the staff locker room. The night cleaning crew mentioned the CFO's assistant using old lockers for overflow paperwork. Isn't that against protocol? Anna helped her search. Exactly. Alexander's rules require all documents be digitally archived. Mara's hands moved quickly. Found it! In the back of locker 342, behind cleaning supplies, sat a manila folder. Inside was a draft of the bank transfer document with edit marks and revision dates. Look. Mara's hands shook. They tried 3 versions before getting it right. This proves it's fake. Anna hugged her fiercely. You brilliant woman. In his therapy session, Alexander sank into a chair. I keep remembering her face when I accused her, like I'd physically struck her. You chose protecting yourself over protecting her, Dr. Layla said gently. The board was pressuring me. Caleb was threatening takeover. The evidence seemed solid. He rubbed his face. Excuses, all excuses. What would you say to her now? Alexander stared at his hands. That I'm sorry, that I was weak, that letting her go was the biggest mistake of my life. And what stops you from telling her this? Pride, fear, shame. He looked up. The terror that she'll never forgive me. Mara spread her evidence across Anna's coffee table. Photographs, email threads, security logs, and the damning draft documents. A pattern emerged. Caleb's team had been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The gala incident gave them their chance, Mara realized. They knew Alexander would be vulnerable, that our arrangement would create scandal. They just had to wait for the right moment to expose me. Diabolical, Anna muttered. But why go through all this? The trust. Mara remembered the conversation she'd overheard. There's some clause about legacy. Caleb wants Alexander out of power. She looked at her collected evidence. Proof of her innocence, yes, but also something bigger. A coordinated attack on Alexander's position, using her as a weapon. The magnitude of it hit her. This wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. Alexander's entire legacy hung in the balance. In his penthouse, Alexander stood in Mara's empty suite. Her scent lingered faintly, lavender and clean cotton. On the nightstand sat a forgotten hair tie. Such a small thing to break his heart. His phone buzzed with another board update, another crisis meeting. More pressure, more control required. But for the first time in his life, control felt like poison. He touched the hair tie gently. I'm sorry, he whispered to the empty room. At Anna's apartment, Mara carefully photographed every piece of evidence, uploading it to secure cloud storage. Her hands trembled, but her mind was clear. "What now?" Anna asked. Mara looked at the proof of her innocence, of Caleb's betrayal, of a conspiracy that threatened everything Alexander had built. Now we fight back. She couldn't fix Alexander's lack of faith in her. That wound was too deep, too personal. But she could protect him from those who would destroy him, even if he'd failed to protect her. Her phone lit up with another barrage of accusations and speculation. She ignored them all, focusing instead on organizing her evidence. The truth would come out, piece by carefully documented piece. Morning light filtered through Anna's kitchen window as Mara spread documents across the small table. Her friend Marcus, a former IT specialist, examined each piece with methodical precision. "These email timestamps create a clear pattern," Marcus said, typing rapidly on his laptop. "Caleb's team coordinated their moves through private servers, but they left digital footprints." Anna poured more coffee. "Can you prove the documents were forged?" "Better." Marcus turned his screen. "The metadata shows multiple revision dates. They edited that transfer document 3 times before settling on the final version. Plus, the signatures don't match Mara's personnel files." Mara leaned forward. "Can you track who accessed the system?" "Already did." He pointed to a string of code. "Someone used the CFO's credentials after hours, when he was documented at a charity event across town." Across Manhattan, Alexander sat in his private office, staring unseeing at market reports when his grandmother swept in unannounced. "We need to talk." Evelyn's voice carried its usual authority, but something in her expression made Alexander pause. "I'm rather busy dealing with the mess I helped create." She placed a manila envelope on his desk. "I've known about Caleb's ambitions for months. I thought pressure would force you to secure the legacy. I was wrong." Alexander's hands stilled. "What are you saying?" "The trust clause about heirs? It's real, but not as Caleb presented it." She sat gracefully. "Your father added it to ensure the company stayed within direct bloodlines, yes, but there's no time limit, no immediate threat to your position. Yet you let me believe I let you feel the pressure I thought you needed." Her perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. "I never intended for Caleb to use it this way." At Anna's apartment, Marcus built a secure digital timeline. "Look at this pattern. Every leaked photo of Mara coincides with board meeting dates. They were trying to destabilize Alexander's position. And I was just convenient collateral damage." Mara said bitterly. "No." Anna touched her arm. "You were chosen specifically because you matter to him." In Alexander's office, Evelyn opened the envelope. "This arrived at my house yesterday. I intercepted it before Caleb's people could destroy it." Alexander removed several photographs and a USB drive. His breath caught. Images showed Caleb meeting with the CFO's assistant, dates clearly visible. Document drafts passed between them. "He orchestrated all of it," Evelyn said quietly. "The photos, the forged transfers, the strategic leaks. He wanted you distracted, emotional, unable to see clearly. And I played directly into his hands." Alexander's voice was raw. "I betrayed the one person who—" He couldn't finish. Marcus finished compiling the evidence into an encrypted file. "I've organized everything chronologically. Bank records, security logs, email threads, and those draft documents you found. It's bulletproof." Mara nodded, exhausted but determined. "The board's integrity committee needs to see this." "Already set up anonymous secure delivery," Marcus said. "They'll receive it within the hour." "You're doing the right thing," Anna assured her. "Even after how he treated you. This isn't about him anymore." But Mara's voice wavered. "It's about justice." Alexander paced his office. "I have to find her. She's staying with that housekeeper friend," Evelyn offered. "Anna something." He grabbed his phone, dialing Mara's number, straight to voicemail. His hands shook as he tried Anna's contact. Disconnected. I have to go. He grabbed his coat. Have security send everything to legal. I need to make things right. Evelyn's lips curved slightly. Finally. Mara watched the delivery confirmation appear on Marcus's screen. It's done. They'll need time to review everything. Marcus warned. Could be hours before... A knock at the door made them all freeze. Anna peeked through the peephole and inhaled sharply. It's him, she whispered. Mara's heart stuttered. Alexander? Want me to tell him to leave? Anna's protective instinct flared. Another knock, more urgent. Mara? Alexander's voice carried through the door. Please, I know you're there. Mara stood slowly, legs unsteady. Everything she'd fought to prove, all the evidence she'd gathered. And here he was, before any of it mattered. I'll get rid of him, Anna offered again. No. Mara squared her shoulders. I need to face this. She crossed to the door, each step feeling monumental. Her hand hesitated on the knob as Alexander called her name again, something desperate in his tone. Whatever happens, Marcus said quietly. We have proof now. You're vindicated. Mara nodded, drew a steadying breath, and opened the door. Alexander stood there, barely composed, his usual immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to pause. Mara. Her name emerged like a prayer. She gripped the doorframe, anchoring herself. Why are you here? Words seemed to fail him. The mighty CEO, the man who commanded boardrooms with a glance, stood speechless before her. Behind her, Anna and Marcus watched protectively. The evidence sat compiled on the laptop, ready to expose everything. But in this moment, with Alexander's devastated eyes fixed on her face, none of that seemed to matter. Time stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and raw hurt. The hallway light cast shadows across Alexander's face, highlighting the dark circles under his eyes, the strain around his mouth. I know the truth, he finally managed. About Caleb, about everything. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. Mara felt tears threatening but held them back. You didn't trust me. No, he agreed, his voice breaking. I didn't trust myself to be worthy of you, and I projected that fear onto you. I chose control over faith. I chose wrong. The sincerity in his voice made her heart ache, but she remained silent, waiting. Alexander took a shaky breath. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. The hallway's fluorescent lights hummed as Alexander stood in Anna's doorway, his usual commanding presence stripped bare. Mara's fingers stayed white-knuckled on the doorframe, her shield against the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Please, he said softly. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Anna stepped forward protectively. After what you did, it's okay. Mara interrupted. 5 minutes. They moved to Anna's tiny balcony. The city spread beneath them like scattered stars. Alexander's expensive suit looked out of place against the weathered railing. I was wrong, he began, his voice raw. Not just about Caleb's deception, about everything, about what matters. You didn't trust me, Mara said, after everything we shared, because I've never trusted anyone. His hands gripped the railing. My whole life has been about control, about proving I'm untouchable. Then you came along and suddenly I was touchable, vulnerable. When Caleb presented those documents, it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about my greatest fear, that letting someone in meant inevitable pain. Mara watched his profile, the way his jaw worked with emotion. But being without you. He turned to her, eyes bright with unshed tears. That's worse than any pain I imagined. I love you, Mara, not for what you represent or what the board wants. I love your steadiness, your quiet strength, the way you see through every wall I've built. The words hung between them, honest and exposed. Love isn't enough, Mara said quietly. Not if you'll always choose the company over trust. Then let me prove it's you I choose. He stepped closer. Come with me to the shareholders' meeting. Let me make this right, publicly, permanently. Mara studied him. You'd risk everything? You are everything. Inside, Marcus cleared his throat. The evidence file just reached the board. They're convening emergency proceedings in an hour. Alexander extended his hand to Mara. Partner? She hesitated, then took it. Partner. The Voss Global Towers conference level buzzed with tension. Shareholders and board members filed in, suits crisp and faces grim. Caleb stood at the head of the table, papers arranged before him like weapons. Alexander and Mara entered together. Whispers erupted. Evelyn, seated near the front, smiled slightly. What is she doing here? Caleb demanded. This is a closed meeting. This is the truth. Alexander cut in, his voice carrying. The truth about legacy, manipulation, and what really matters. He strode forward, Mara beside him. My brother orchestrated an elaborate deception, not just against me, but against this company and its values. The projector hummed to life, displaying the evidence Mara had compiled. Email threads, financial records, the forged documents in draft form. These records show a systematic attempt to destabilize leadership through false accusations, manipulated evidence, and strategic leaks. Alexander's tone was steel. The CFO's cooperation has been bought. The trust clause was exploited, and an innocent woman's reputation was destroyed for profit. Caleb's face drained of color. You can't prove... We can prove all of it. Mara spoke up. Every head turned. Every meeting, every forged document, every orchestrated leak. I found the proof because I know this building's rhythms. I see what others miss. The board chairman leaned forward. Miss Hayes, you're claiming... She's claiming nothing. Alexander interrupted. She's presenting evidence. Evidence that exposes not just corporate manipulation, but my own failures. He faced the room squarely. I let fear of vulnerability compromise my judgment. I chose control over trust, image over truth. I hurt someone I love because I was too afraid to admit I could love at all. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Caleb tried to stand, but security appeared, flanking him. The police are en route, Evelyn announced calmly. The CFO is already in custody. This company was built on integrity. Alexander continued. Today we restore that. Caleb Voss and his conspirators will face legal consequences. The trust clause will be suspended pending review. The chairman nodded grimly. Given the evidence, I move to immediately remove Caleb Voss from all positions and freeze his assets pending investigation. Seconded. 3 voices called. And Miss Hayes? Someone asked. Alexander turned to Mara, his eyes soft. Is not my scandal or my secret. She is my partner, my moral compass, and the woman I love. Any questions about her integrity reflect poorly on the questioner, not her. Voices erupted. Shock, support, confusion. But Mara heard none of it. She saw only Alexander, finally stripped of pretense, choosing love over empire. Security led Caleb out. The chairman called for procedural votes. Through the conference room's glass walls, press gathered, cameras flashing. They'll want a statement, Mara murmured. Let them wait. Alexander faced her. I need to know. Can you forgive me? Can we build something real, something honest? Mara looked at their joined hands, then at the waiting cameras. They're watching. They always will be. The question is, do we face it together? Outside, reporters surged forward as the doors opened. Questions flew like arrows. Mr. Voss, is it true about the conspiracy? Miss Hayes, what's your relationship status? Alexander, how will this affect the company? Mara felt Alexander's hand tense in hers. This was his world. Cameras, questions, constant scrutiny. But as she looked at him, she saw past the power and position to the man who'd finally chosen vulnerability over control. She squeezed his hand, making her choice. The cameras caught everything. Her step forward, their joined hands raised, the way Alexander's face transformed with joy and relief. Tomorrow would bring challenges, headlines would speculate, society would gossip. But in this moment, with trust restored and love chosen over empire, none of that mattered. The truth, like their clasped hands, was simple and strong and finally free. The penthouse elevator opened silently. Alexander and Mara stepped out together, still holding hands from the shareholders' meeting. The familiar space felt different now, cleansed of secrets, ready for new beginnings home. Alexander said softly, then hesitated. If you want it to be. Mara squeezed his hand. I do, but we do this right this time. Equal partners. They settled on the living room couch, bodies turned toward each other. Outside, Manhattan's lights twinkled through falling snow. I want to rebuild your trust, Alexander said, not just with words, with actions, time, consistency. And I want to help you learn that vulnerability isn't weakness. Mara touched his cheek. You were amazing today, choosing truth over control. He leaned into her touch. I should have chosen you sooner, should have trusted. Shh. She pressed a finger to his lips. We're here now. Let's focus on forward. They talked for hours, planning and dreaming. Alexander would restructure the board with greater transparency. Mara would finish her degree while maintaining her independence. They'd date properly, public and private moments both. Build something real. The week that followed brought rapid change. Caleb faced criminal charges for fraud and corporate espionage. The CFO cooperated with authorities, revealing the full scope of the conspiracy. The board stabilized under Alexander's renewed leadership, this time with ethical oversight built in. Evelyn visited on Wednesday, carrying tea and tentative olive branches. You've transformed him, she told Mara privately. I've never seen Alexander so human. He transformed himself. Mara corrected gently. He just needed someone to believe he could. The older woman nodded, something softening in her eyes. Perhaps I was wrong about legacy. Perhaps it's not about heirs and empires, but about leaving love behind. Alexander found them later, sharing cookies and careful conversation. He kissed both their cheeks, a small gesture that spoke volumes about healing. Each evening that week, Alexander and Mara rebuilt intimacy. They took their time, exploring without pressure. Sometimes they just held each other, trading secrets and dreams. Other times passion overtook them, but now it was grounded in choice and trust. I love watching you work, Mara admitted one afternoon, finding him in his office. He looked up, smiling. And I love that you're not afraid to interrupt me anymore. She perched on his desk. Confident CEO Alexander Voss, taking interruptions? Scandal. Speaking of scandals. He pulled her into his lap, nuzzling her neck. Want to create one in the boardroom? Behave. She laughed, but didn't move away. The media eventually calmed, especially after Alexander's public statement about corporate reform and personal growth. Their relationship became old news, replaced by holiday headlines and economic forecasts. 1 month later, on Christmas Eve, Snow fell thick outside the penthouse windows. They'd decorated together, a first for Alexander, who'd never bothered before. The tree sparkled with white lights, and a fire crackled in the hearth. "Join me?" Mara patted the thick rug before the fireplace. Alexander settled beside her, pulling her close. "Best Christmas Eve I've had. It's about to get better." She took his hand, placing it on her stomach. "I'm pregnant." Alexander froze. For a moment, only the fire's pop broke the silence. Then his eyes filled with tears. "You're sure?" he whispered. She nodded, watching his face transform with wonder and joy. "I know it's early," she said quickly, "and we hadn't planned." He kissed her, deep and tender. When they parted, his voice was rough with emotion. "I choose this. Choose you. Choose us, not for legacy or duty or anyone else. Just love." Mara curled into him, both of them watching the flames dance. "You know what this means, right? Remember your drunken declaration at the gala? 3 sons by Christmas?" Alexander groaned, burying his face in her hair. "I was hoping you'd forgotten that particular moment of idiocy." "Never." She turned in his arms, kissing him softly. "Although I think we should take our time with the other 2. Or 3, or none." He caressed her stomach reverently. "Whatever we choose together." Snow continued falling outside, blanketing the city in silence. Inside, the fire warmed them as they traded gentle kisses and whispered plans. Alexander's hands wandered, drawing soft sighs from Mara. "I love you," he murmured against her skin. "Every day, every moment, I'll choose you." She pulled him closer, their bodies melting together on the thick rug. The firelight painted them in gold as passion built slowly, sweetly. Their lovemaking was unhurried, tender, a celebration of trust restored and love chosen freely. Later, wrapped in blankets with the fire burning low, Alexander brushed Mara's hair back from her face. His eyes danced with mischief and joy. "So," he whispered, 3 sons by Christmas?" Mara laughed, swatting his chest. "Let's start with this one and see what happens." "Deal." He pulled her closer, hands gentle on her still flat stomach. "We'll take our time.